All right. Again, everyone, welcome to the session this morning. And if you have any questions, please go ahead and drop them in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and stop my share and introduce our presenters.
Thank you so much, Marissa. Uh, our presentation is on using Cycle 2 performance data to strengthen program practice, but really with an emphasis on fostering candidate belonging through data conversations and dialogues.
Thank you, Kat, and thank you, Marissa. My name is Barbara Howard. I'm an associate professor for the School of Education at Concordia University, Irvine, and I'm the director of assessment and accreditation for the School of Education, which means that I do all things data.
And we're so lucky to have Barbara because she really does help bring the data conversations and makes it make sense to all of us so we can use that data to improve our practice. My name is Catherine Webb. I go by Kat, and I'm a professor in the School of Education, also at Concordia University. I've been with Concordia University since 2012. I'm currently the director of our MAED admin program, as well as our PASC program. And I'm the chair of our doctoral program in our administration specialization, but I also serve as the Cal APA coordinator, which gives me just the privilege of being able to bring everything I've learned back to our students to serve them and to help them be more successful as they learn the skills to navigate the Cal APA.
So Concordia University, Irvine, we're a private, faith-based liberal arts university. We're located in Southern California in Irvine. We have approximately a student body of about 3,500 that is constituted of undergraduate and graduate students. We offer bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, EDDs, and PhDs. We have about 24,000 plus alumni worldwide, all over. And we are a designated HSI, Hispanic Serving Institution, and have been since 2019. And we currently have 3 federal HSI grants. And even though we all know that right now grant funding has been halted, the work that we do as an HSI, the work that we have been doing with our students has not stopped. We still very much think that it is extraordinarily important to value our HSI standing and our students.
In our school administration program, we have our master's degree with the PASC, the Preliminary Administrative Service Credential, and that program takes about 14 months. We also have the PASC only option, which is a reduction of 3 classes, and that takes 12 months. And we serve approximately 100 to 150 candidates each year. And since 2020, we have graduated over 700 students, and those 700 have earned their preliminary administrative service credential. In our program, we have 3 content courses, which are worth 9 units, and we have subject matter experts who serve in those roles, who are specialists in human resources, in policy, and in fiscal services. And then we have our 3 administrative leadership courses, which are our Cal APA specific courses. One that focuses in on Cycle 1 with the data analysis and identifying the equity gap. Cycle 2, serving the community of practice. And then Cycle 3, where our candidates are taught the skills needed to effectively coach teachers to become better in their practice. And then we have 2 practicum courses, which are worth 6 units, 3 each. And it's 100 hours of practicum experience, and it spans over 6 terms. So as our students are going through their core coursework, they start immediately with their practicum and work with their practicum supervisor and their site supervisor to complete the practicum hours. And while doing so, the site supervisor has agreed to have experiences that are specific to the Cal APA so that they're able to effectively work through those Cal APA performance assessments with the opportunities to demonstrate their mastery of those skills. We have one full-time faculty member in our admin specialization, and we work with approximately 40 adjunct instructors, and those adjunct instructors primarily teach the content core classes, the Cal APA or administrative leadership courses, and the practicum. I serve as the full-time faculty member overseeing all of our adjuncts and working specifically with the Cal APA. But we vet and hire expert practitioners in the field. We try to find candidates, or we try to find our adjunct instructors who have experience working with the Cal APA. If they are assessors, that is an absolute bonus. So we're always looking for instructors who have experience working with the Cal APA. Our content courses are all asynchronous, but our leadership courses, and those would be the ones that tailor specifically to the Cal APA, are asynchronous and synchronous, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So in 2017, 2018, we participated in the field test. Prior to that was the pilot. And 2018 to 19 was our non-consequential year. We moved into the consequential Cal APA, as many of you. And then in 2019 to 2020, we revamped our program. And every year since then, we have updated our courses to reflect the current versions of the Cal APA. The way that this all worked for our university is originally, and I'll speak to this a little bit more later, but originally our content of the Cal APA were embedded into all of our coursework, and that was fantastic. We had all of the deliverables and course learning outcomes that matched the CAPES. However, we found that our students really did need more explicit instruction, not specifically on how to take the test, but needed specific instruction on how to meet the deliverables of the Cal APA assessments. So we created 3 separate leadership courses, 561 through 563. 561 aligns with Cal APA Cycle 1, 562 with Cycle 2, etc. And then in order to meet the needs of students who were not successful, we created a remediation course, which is EDUA 564. And the responsibility of the Cal APA coordinator is to reach out to the students who are not successful on the Cal APA, to have a conversation with them, have them upload their submissions to me, and then I would help them decide the correct course of action, whether it was a simple resubmission due to a technical error, or if they really needed more explicit instruction and assistance in learning the skills to be able to pass the Cal APA. So the remediation is a one-on-one with an instructor. After they meet with me, we will identify an instructor who has expertise in that particular cycle area and then pair them with that. And our courses, as I mentioned, have this balanced asynchronous and synchronous session for these leadership courses. Our students have the opportunity to meet with instructors 3 times during the course of their Cal APA weeks 1, 3, 5, actually 4 times, 1, 3, 5, and 7, where they collaborate with their classmates. They're able to engage in peer review and then to talk about questions and the challenges that they might be facing. Our capstone was completely revamped. Our students in our admin program no longer have a specific capstone. We've replaced that with the Cal APA explicit instruction through our leadership courses, but we have just really moved our content out of the Cal APA content. It's still embedded in all of the courseworks. We haven't changed that, but the 3 courses, as I mentioned, is very explicit to the Cal APA. Some other delivery improvements that we made is because of the rigor of the Cal APA assessments, we have implemented pre-term meetings. So the Cal APA coordinator will meet with all of the adjuncts who are going to be teaching the Cal APA courses or the leadership courses and discuss what some of the challenges that have been faced. All of our Cal APA instructors attend the deep dives. They're able to really identify those areas where there might be some growth areas for our students. One of the primary tasks of the instructors who attend the preterm meeting is to disaggregate data, to look at the data, to identify areas of strength, and to identify growth areas. In addition to that, we listen to our students. We have students complete the end of course surveys, and we found that it was just really a struggle for our students to try and navigate the Cal IPAs independently, which is why we revamped our courses to reflect explicit instruction in the Cal IPA. In addition, we had to revise our course sequence. The reason for this is the Cal IPA requires our candidates to interact with their peers at their site, to engage with data collection, to facilitate communities of practice. And because our courses were aligned with a specific sequence, we needed to go back through our sequence and to revise that. So now our Cal APA Cycle 3 and Cycle 2 take place during the regular school year, and then the Cycle 1 takes place during the summer, where they can access the data, but they don't need to engage with their peers or to necessarily coach or facilitate a community practice during the summer, which just wouldn't be feasible. Adjunct input was really important. We found that we needed to hear what our adjuncts were struggling with. We found that they needed explicit instruction themselves in order to facilitate these courses. So we provided a number of professional development opportunities for our adjuncts so that they would be successful in facilitating these courses and providing support to our candidates. A typical course for our adjuncts, they earn 120 hours. That's what they can report to out on their timesheets. Because of the rigor of the Cal APA, we increased this to 130 hours. And in every course that our instructors teach, there is an instructor feedback form that is a live Google Doc that they have access to. So if there is recommendations, if additional resources needed to be included, if changes needed to be made, it's a simple edit on the instructor feedback form, which then goes to the Cal APA coordinator. At the end of each course that is taught, the Cal APA coordinator can then go in and work with a subject matter expert to make revisions to the courses to better meet student needs, but also to support the instructors, because they are the boots on the ground and they are the ones who are interacting with candidates on a daily basis. And then finally, we have our student course evaluations. And as I mentioned before, these course evaluations really give us insight into what our candidates are experiencing. So if they're struggling, or if the pacing is off, or if some of the content is just difficult or maybe hasn't been explained well, some terminology, we're able to hear that and to make adaptations to our courses as well. So I think one of the advantages of having explicit courses that focus on the individual Cal APA assessments really provides the supportive structure for our students. We have 8 weeks of instruction, which may sound really difficult for students who are having to facilitate a community of practice or to coach a volunteer teacher. But we have found that if we start day one, we provide that explicit instruction, we're providing exemplars, we're supporting our students through each cycle, they're able to successfully complete the cycle within that 8 weeks. And as I mentioned, we have the virtual sessions, which provide opportunities for students to engage in peer review. Peer reviews are integrated into our course structure and explicitly used for step 3 of cycle 2. We're talking about cycle 2 here, but this is pretty consistent with all of our Cal APA courses for each of the 3 assessments. The reason why we have our students engage in peer review specifically for step 3, it hadn't always been that way. We had students engage in peer review for steps 1 through 4, because as facilitators of the course, we cannot provide specific feedback to our students. We really have to be careful in the support we provide to our students. We have conversations amongst ourselves as the instructors on what acceptable use is and how to facilitate a course without providing answers. So the peer review really provides that avenue for students to be able to collaborate and to review their submissions and receive feedback from one another. But something I'm really excited about and very excited to share with you today is we've partnered with a company. It's called Boodlebox, and they have different LMs, different models of AI. And we have incorporated AI bots as learning partners, and we've built these into our courses for steps 1, 2, and 4. And I'll share those specifically with you a little bit later in our presentation, but I just wanted to just plant that seed with you right now and think about the ways that we can use AI with integrity and ethically to be able to support our candidates to use rubric criteria and use AI as a learning partner to identify gaps. This has a number of different implications, especially for students when we're trying to build a sense of belonging. Instructors are still reviewing cycle submissions, ensuring that students have submitted the correct templates, that they have submitted a cycle that would be considered acceptable. But we're allowing the AI bots as learning partners to challenge our students to reach rubric criteria and to continue to move forward with revisions until they have reached an acceptable, something that they feel would be acceptable. And then in addition to that, we have common errors and omissions documents that are live documents in each of our coursework. So as instructors go through and teach assessments or teach the skills so students can be successful on the assessments, they identify growth areas or they identify areas of strengths, and they're added to the common errors and omissions documents to emphasize those particular areas that students might be struggling with or areas that students might have growth with, and then are able to use those areas as talking points during live instruction. But they're also available to our students, so our students can reflect back on these and say, oh, okay, it looks like identifying a problem of practice might be a growth area for our students. Well, this document then would have definitions of problems of practice. It would have exemplars, what an effective problem of practice is versus a problem of practice that is asking students to improve their learning rather than an instructor providing a practice that will help students then improve in their learning. So there's just a number of different ways that the common errors and omissions document works. And we're going to talk so much more about some of the great things that we would like to share with you. But before we do that, we would like to do just a quick check and poll. I'm going to go ahead and if you could get your phone out and if you can go to this here, you can just scan the QR code or you can join by clicking on the Poll Everywhere link and send it to Concordia University Irvine 923 and send that to 37607. Just like to get an idea of where you're at with cycle 2 and what best resonates with you. About 10 more seconds. We really enjoy Poll Everywhere. It's a fantastic technique that allows our students to respond anonymously to different questions that are asked. We use this in our coursework as well. It is a strategy that is really beneficial, specifically for high context learners who may feel uncomfortable or insecure or struggle with imposter syndrome, to respond. So the anonymity really helps provide an opportunity for all student voices to be heard. Uh, as we can see here on this poll, it looks like the majority of our participants find that Cal APA Cycle 2 is very relevant, which I agree. I think being able to facilitate a community of practice is an incredible learning opportunity, but sometimes we need some more ideas. So I'm hoping that with our presentation today, you will feel supported and that there will be some ideas that you can take back and share with your candidates as well. I see that, yeah, Cycle 2 has, we're anxious about it. There's a lot to Cycle 2. We all know that since the implementation of the Cal APA cycles, Cycle 2 has been the most difficult for our students to be successful on, with some of the amazing changes that have been made, thanks to Marissa, with the reduction in condition codes, identifying some of the biases that have been found over the courses of the years and making changes that better meet the needs of our students. I think we're going to find that we're much more successful in presenting information that helps our students learn these skills. And then, yes, Cycle 2 is a struggle, and I absolutely affirm that. It is difficult. I think once we're able to articulate educational focus, problem of practice, and evidence-based strategies in a way that makes sense to our students, I think then the ways to differentiate, to identify different subgroups and data groups, and being able to come up with the implications for the strategy really will, I think, will help our students be more successful. And I love that we have some who find Cycle 2 to be a lot of fun and have strategies. So I'm hoping at the end of today's session, if there are strategies you'd like to share, we would love to hear that.
So shifting gears, one of the exciting things about Concordia University is that we all get to wear a lot of hats. And so an additional hat that both Kat and I wear is we are HSI faculty fellows. Now, again, understanding that right now the grant has been paused, the work that we've done both in our school, in School of Education, and as a university faculty fellow hasn't stopped. And one of the most exciting things that both Kat and I got to do, along with a couple of other colleagues, was we were able to attend an Escala program. And it was a certificate in college teaching and learning in HSIs. And the first thing I want to say is you don't have to be an HSI or teach in an HSI to reap immense benefits from this program. And so while this presentation is not about this program, I did reach out to the president of Escala, and I asked if I could share a little bit about this, because I will say, and I know I'm speaking for both of us when I say this, that when we took this certificate in college teaching and learning in HSIs, it was transformative for both Kat and myself in terms of how we look at how we teach, how we interact with our students, how we interact with courses. And so, and particularly for me as the data person, as the person who is the liaison with the CTC for the School of Education, as the person who is the one that will prepare us for our site visit, how we use data and how we work with data. So this program, we took it this summer. It was actually summer and fall, this past summer and fall. And I just want to share with you 4 of the 10 learning outcomes, because I think those are going to be especially relevant for our program today. So the first one was, one of the things we learned how to do was to calculate an equity index for assessment scores and other course success data, both for our Latinx students and for underserved students, in order to identify and close opportunity gaps. And that was super important for us. We also learned how to examine our own cultural patterns of interaction with students. for low context bias and to create a cultural both and learning environment for our Latinx students. We learned about creating assessments that are low stakes and to create diversity of self, peer, and instructor assessments. And then we also, one of the other learning outcomes was to implement assessment policies that allow the development of expertise throughout the semester. And again, there were 10 learning outcomes. They come right from this Escala cookbook. I would encourage anybody who wants to know more about Scala, and I'll share more about that later, to look into this. But it's going to be very exciting to see how this, along with all the other work we do, came together in a fabulous way, and how Kat was able to transform her program because of the work that we're doing here. So do you want to do the next slide, Kat? So one of the things that Kat and I got to do is we did our final project on CalAPA Cycle 2 test scores. So what we did is we were able to go into Ed Reports and we were able to download all of our Cycle 2 test scores from 2020 through 2024. And I cleaned up all the data, and once we cleaned it all up, we had 368 distinct individual scores. I then cross-referenced all of those scores with our internal data so that I was able then to disaggregate all of those scores by ethnicity and sex. And then I was able to sort it by rubric. And so now if you want to go to the next slide. So what happened is when we looked at all this, we actually found out some interesting information. And so we'll just talk a little bit about that. Because, and again, this was from all scores through 2024. And so the first thing we found is we looked at the average rubric scores. And what we did is we compared our students to the general population, the California population. Thought that would make sense. And I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. We compared our Latinx students with our general population. Sorry. And what we found is, lo and behold, our Latinx students were doing great, right? That's the green bar. And you could see that on almost every rubric, they outscored our general population. Again, if our N is 364, then we have our Latinx students, they were outperforming our general population or scoring basically even with them. And so basically you could say, great, we're done, walk away. Thank you. But we decided to dig a little deeper because that's the fun of data. And so we looked more closely and we actually broke down the data by ethnicity and gender. And this was actually a lot of fun for us. So the kind of creamy orange column or creamy orange bar is our general population. And then you can see our males and our females, Latinx students, male and female. And lo and behold, our males don't score as well as our females do. And we thought that was kind of interesting. And what you could see is not only did our males not score as well as our Latinx females, but they also didn't always score as well as our general population. So there's definitely a question for us, isn't there? And that is, what's happening? So that allowed us to take a deeper dive. But now I want to take you to a different slide. And I apologize, this is an eye-popping slide. I have a propensity for colors, so if it makes people crazy, I apologize. But what we decided to do was to look at the data across all of our students, all of our ethnicities. And so what we did is we basically just disaggregated our data. And so what you could see is, like, for instance, in cycle 2, rubric 1, generally, our students all scored in a 3-ish, right? Except for one part of our population, which was our American Indian Alaska Natives. But what you can see if you look across the cycle is, like, rubric 3, something crazy happened, right? The scores kind of jump around more. And then if you look at rubric 4, you can see, oh, they kind of all even out again. And then if you go to the next slide, now we'll go to 5, 6, and 7. You see again, there's this hopping around in rubric 6. So all of these this data caused us to ask some questions, like what's happening with our students? Why is our population, I'm just gonna let this person in. Why is it that some students do well on these rubrics and others don't. And so what's happening here? All right, so those are the questions. Now, before we move on, I just want to share a little bit more. So Escala is Escala Educational Services. And if you have found any part of this part of our presentation interesting, we want to encourage you to either go to their website that's listed here, or to even send an email to them at Escala Ed. Again, this was just a tiny, tiny snippet, and you're going to hear more about what we learned, but a tiny snippet of how we learned how to disaggregate data and use it to ask real big questions, which then are going to reap real big answers. Okay.
So
now,
someone had asked if we could put our slides in this format into the chat. So Barbara, if you wouldn't mind doing that so I don't have to exit out of presenter format, that would be really helpful.
You mean the slideshow?
The slide, yes.
What we're looking at right now. Yes, I think I can share that. I'm going to copy the link.
Awesome,
and
thank you.
Pop it into the.
So I mentioned.
Here it is right here. Go ahead.
I mentioned earlier a little bit about high context learners. So research on high context learners consistently show that relational dialogue, that conversation between peers, collective knowledge, drawing on previous learning, and then using their assets and what they have brought with them to the classroom, and trust building increases engagement and persistence for all students, but specifically for Latinx students in HSIs. So the more we frame instruction as learning with and from one another, rather than just proving individual mastery on an assessment, we found that the more culturally responsive our courses become, the more likely our students are to develop a sense of belonging. So what is a sense of belonging? It refers to the extent to which students feel personally accepted, included, and supported at school. And it includes not just school-based experiences, but it goes so much more beyond that to include explicit and deep relationships with teachers and peers. And these are not just relationships through interactions that happen in classrooms because you're working on an assignment. But these are intentionally built relationships that we as instructors take the time to establish with our students. And a sense of belonging is just this overall general feeling of well-being about school. And this isn't just in the classes we teach as at the university level, but this is information to share with your candidates to incorporate into their classes as well, because we've learned that academic achievement is not the only thing that's important. Well-being is equally important. And I think that's why our Cal APA has placed such an emphasis on instructional achievement as well as student well-being. So how sense of belonging is manifested, it's not just about what we do to support our students, but it really is their perception of the support that we provide to them. So it really is all about their perception. We could do amazing things, or we may think we're doing amazing things, but until our students actually perceive that we are making an effort to build these relationships and to connect with them, it's this feeling or this experience of mattering and feeling cared about and accepted and respected. And there's some tools and some strategies that we've implemented to bring more belonging to our classroom. But I think it's important to focus on why this is all important. Why do we care? Well, one reason is if we focus in on building a sense of belonging and serving all students, including those, of course, who are historically underserved, well, retention is a huge outcome. A strong connection to the campus typically leads to great outcomes, including enhanced engagement and a greater sense of belonging, but ultimately retention. So I loved how Barbara presented about Escala and our CTL and the professional development we engaged in, because it did completely transform the way that I think about my students and the way that I instruct my students. But most importantly, I think, is I was able then to share this with my 40 adjuncts and to then take that to the classroom. And they're sharing it with their candidates, which means their candidates are now sharing it with their students. So this trickle down effect is transformative. One of the ways that we've done this is through our adjunct preterm meetings. And this is since our CTL class, the previous preterm meetings were all about the cycles and the changes that were being made and the updates that were made and what rubric scores were the lowest. Now we've transformed our adjunct preterm meetings to have a focus in on belongingness and what this looks like. And this is all based on the data. And Barbara will share that with you. We have an end of course survey, but we also have a belongingness survey. And we're finding from our students that this connection and this need to belong is a data area that we felt what needed to be focused in on. So with our adjuncts, we're asking them now to explain, we're asking them to emphasize an importance on increased structured peer-to-peer collaboration, because we've learned that high context learners learn best through working with one another. And to start this earlier in the process, to have collaborative discussions during our synchronous sessions, to have small group breakouts outside of the class, as well as breakouts within our synchronous sessions. And this is in addition to the standard peer reviews that I mentioned earlier, where we'll have our students have exemplars, and then they'll look at these exemplars and they will take their submission and compare it to the exemplars and then meet with their peers. Their peers will evaluate their work, provide suggestions on the rubric gaps. And this is a great strategy to be able to encourage students who maybe are feeling a little bit insecure about their work. And also in these preterm meetings, we're encouraging our adjuncts to really validate the funds of knowledge that our candidates bring, to bring their culture into the class, to talk about what their strengths are and what they have to offer, and to be able to celebrate. Anonymous questioning, as I mentioned earlier when I was demonstrating the poll everywhere, it provides a safety net to our high context learners, and it supports low context learners as well. I think everybody enjoys participating in polls or surveys where there is very low risk. They don't feel like they have to be perfect, and making mistakes is acceptable. Also providing multimodal low stakes tasks. And what that means is not having everything have grade points assigned to it, having opportunities and checkpoints where students can submit and receive feedback without feeling it's punitive or they're going to be penalized. And then also with our adjuncts, we're encouraging them to provide relational checkpoints as well. And that's something that is new. In past years, we haven't focused much on the relational component. We're a Christian university. We are servant leaders. We pray with our students. We provide opportunities for our students to connect with us. But those relational checkpoints were void in our classrooms previously. So that is based on the data that we received. That's one area that we took to improve in this particular area. And then some of the other ways that, based on the data, that we've increased our sense of belonging in the classrooms are through welcome announcements and videos with relatedness content. And I'm going to share with you an announcement, and hopefully I don't lose my slide. But what I want to share with you before I do that is that as university instructors, we all have we tend to focus in on the deliverables, what the students need to know. We have Carnegie units. You have this much of reading to do. You have these assessments, and you need to successfully complete these tasks in order to be successful. That's kind of the attitude many of us have taken as university professors when working with our students. But what we've learned is that if we convey that we believe in our students' potential to succeed, no matter how difficult it is, especially with cycle 2, if we state that we're going to support our students in a way that communicating with us is not a difficult task, that we're on their side, we're providing availability to our students. We highlight the specific ways that we're going to ensure that they're going to be successful, that they can ask for assistance, and what the outside of class office hours are. And then I think talking about our own struggles to succeed in college, I always go into classes sharing with my students that I'm a first generation college student. It was not easy for me. I did not have the easiest path as I move forward in my education. I always own my white privilege, and that is true and that is there. But I share with my students that yes, it is difficult, and talking about our own struggles as we move forward in college helps to kind of normalize the idea of persistence and their growth and their development. And then finally stating that, they already have these assets. We're validating these funds of knowledge, that they possess so many of the things that are needed in order to succeed, and that we can leverage those in their success on these assessments. So it's a little embarrassing, but I'm going to share with you the announcements that I used to share with my students. And I hope you could all see this. And I'm just going to read just a little bit of it. But right down here at the bottom, I'm highlighting, in our master's program, we operate under Carnegie units, meaning that you're expected to complete as much work in 8 weeks as other students in a traditional 16-week course. Oh my goodness. If high context learners are reading that, they're probably ready to just withdraw at that moment. You're going to have a great deal of reading, writing, and research, and you better keep up and don't procrastinate on your reading or you'll fall behind. So those were really kind of the announcements that I have had in my courses. I mean, if you read it, it's not as bad as I'm making it sound, but it is not encouraging a sense of belonging by any means. It's actually, I'm embarrassed by it. So after going through our course, I have revised my welcome announcements, and I have encouraged each of my adjunct instructors to do the same. They are now required to go into their announcements and include belongingness and relatedness language, so that the courses are more inviting and they provide opportunities for students to want to reach out, to be successful, and to engage with their instructor. So things like, I know this course is rigorous, but I also know you have the strengths and expectations to succeed. I'm here to support you, guide you, and help you. If you encounter challenges, that's totally normal. I will work with you to help find strategies to help you be successful. Just those tiny shifts in language have made my students feel, and not just my students, but the students in our program, feel that their instructors really are there to help them be successful, not to punitively grade them and challenge them to prove their worth. Okay, the videos, the same idea with the videos, conveying information in all of our instructors are required to post weekly videos to our students about the deliverables of the week, but also provide language that encourages our students to continue on, to persist in the program, and to successfully pass their assessments. Some of the things I want to share with you in the next slide are the AI integrations that we've done, and the rubric alignment and exemplars. And those are some strategies that I just feel so excited about. They're things that I think are game changers in the way that we're instructing. I think it's important that we acknowledge that AI is here. It is not going away. Our students are only going to continue to use it. So if we don't teach them to use it ethically, who's going to? And so we have taken the approach at our university to incorporate AI into our instruction in most of our classes, but to also teach them that using AI ethically and responsibly can be a learning opportunity. We have different ways of looking at AI, and I'm going to just pull up my first slide here. And it reads Mastery Learning Through AI Bots and Rubric Gaps. Before we incorporate any AI bots into our classrooms, we have instruction during our synchronous session. And again, synchronous, we're meeting with them through Zoom. It's a live session. We go through the AI supported tasks and we talk about the differences of the ways to use AI. You could use it as augmentation, as a substitute, or abdication. Abdication is absolutely not allowed. We do not allow our students to use AI to write the responses for them, to generate any types of narratives, to analyze their data. Absolutely not. We do encourage our students to use it as augmentation and in some ways as substitution, depending on the assignment. For the purpose of Cal APA, however, we're using it as augmentation. AI is a thought partner, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail. But then we do talk about what is acceptable and what is absolutely unacceptable and the examples. And we spend a significant amount of time doing that to ensure that our students understand the ethical and responsible use of AI. And just as a side note, when I create the AI bots, and for some of you who may not know what an AI bot is we have learning models like Gemini, ChatGPT, Llama. There's a number of different AI models, and I'm sure there's some of you who are so much more experienced with this than I am. So if I don't go into depth enough, I apologize, but I have a limited understanding, and what I do understand is what I do use. So we use a LM, which is a learning model system that is self-contained. And what we do is we submit our work, our knowledge, it's called, we upload knowledge to the AI bot, and then we encourage the AI bot to create trying to think of the word, it's like instructions, but I know that there's other words for it, but the AI bot then creates instructions to train the model on how to review our students' work. But the instructions are very specific. You are not to give students answers. You're only to use the rubrics. You only use rubric language when you are comparing the rubric to the student's work. Emphasizing you absolutely cannot do the work for the student. You have to ask questions, encouraging students to think deeper about the response. So just to give an example, this is an example of a bot that I created for rubric 2.1, and it's lengthy, but you do have all access to this, so you're welcome to review this. But when a student has their submission, they will click on this AI bot link that I've put into the course for them. They'll click on this bot and the bot will say, "Hi, welcome. I am your step 1 learning partner." And the student will submit their work, and the AI bot will then take their work, compare it to the rubric, and then come back with questions. You said this in your response. Look at rubric 2.1. There may be a gap here. What do you think you can do to address this gap area? Never giving the student the answer. And the instructions for this particular one is I provided the rubric criteria, and I'm just going to kind of scroll through because it looks at rubrics 1 through level 5 for each of rubrics 2.1 and 2.2. And then it tells the bot, your responsibility is to evaluate the work only against the criteria stated above. It can't go out into the general internet. It can't grab other students' responses. It is a self-contained bot that is only looking at the Cal APA rubric and any student submissions that I've provided to it. It's asking the bot to determine which level it thinks it is based on a rubric level of 1 through 5. Again, emphasizing to students that this is not the Pearson assessor. This is not a formal assessment. It is a learning tool only, emphasizing, and I encourage my students to try and break it. If you can find a way to break it, let me know. I'll go back in and adjust those instructions. Also emphasizing, and I'll highlight that down, but it says, what I love about this bot is its sequential progression. If the bot feels that the student has met level 3, it will then ask the student if they want to try for level 4. And if they've met level 4, Do you want to try for level 5? It is not pushing the student to do it. If the student, however, did not meet a level 3, it will then ask them to provide evidence, to look for those gaps, to help them identify what those gaps, and to challenge them to then meet level 3 criteria. If it does meet a level 3 criteria, it says things like, congratulations, in my opinion, this looks like it might have met a level 3 criteria. Do you want to continue on to a level 4? So the reason why I'm sharing this with you is for a number of different reasons. One, what we learned about high context learners is that mastery learning is incredibly important. We as instructors do not have the time or the ability or we're not allowed to look at a student's work and assess it, tell them to go back and fix it, provide it back for submission, provide additional feedback. However, peers can do that because we've been told peers are absolutely able to work with a student to provide suggestions and to be able to challenge them to meet additional rubric criteria. Using AI to do that provides an opportunity, especially for students who are feeling insecure about their own performance, who have insecurities about just their own performance. There is no threat of making a mistake or feeling like this mistake cannot be fixed. AI gives our students an opportunity to continue to work on their submissions in order to advance in that rubric criteria, which is just really fun. Something else are the priority areas. And what I've done is, and I've encouraged my instructors to do this as well, we have something called Notebook LM, and that is also a learning model that is self-contained. And if I submit all of my students' work through Notebook LM and ask it to identify the areas that students are persistently or consistently getting wrong, it will create a document. And so that's what we've done here. And just as an example, this is something I did yesterday. I met with my students during our week 5 meeting, and I asked AI to help me identify the priority areas that students were consistently struggling with on step 2. And it provided some amazing information. And again, we're using data. We're using our students' work to be able to identify those priority areas that might help our students become more successful. One of the areas that I found was I'm just scrolling to the bottom here, and I'm sorry if it looks, and again, you have access to all of this, but the impact mechanism is something that was brought up yesterday, and I've seen it consistently in our students' work for cycle 2. For cycle 2, step 2. What is that impact mechanism? And we're talking about the impact mechanism of the evidence-based strategy. Our students are saying things like, my strategy is going to help improve comprehension. Well, that's fantastic, but that is not what the rubric is asking. The rubric is asking our students to identify the impact that this strategy is going to have on student learning and well-being. Certainly, increasing comprehension is fantastic, but moving beyond the improving comprehension to having a detailed explanation of how and why the strategy worked. And something that I struggled with was trying to teach my students what exactly that meant. So we went through and we asked AI to help us write an impact of what this particular strategy would look like. And it was able to do it so much better than I was and explain it in a way that I struggled to explain it to my students. So they explained it in a way that identified how and why the strategy would work. So, for example, when teachers intentionally strengthen differentiation and scaffolding of this strategy, so if we're looking at comprehension, that is absolutely the end goal. But what the cycle 2 rubrics are asking for is to what exactly is going to help students improve that comprehension. Well, it's the differentiation, it's the scaffolding, and then what's going to happen from there? Well, then students, they get this targeted support. They're able to make content more accessible, and then the end goal is that comprehension. If I had not thrown all of my student submissions in and used AI to help me identify this gap area, I would have struggled to articulate the how and the why to the students. So this is just one more tool that we were able to use based on our data to help our students be successful. And then, because I know we're getting close to our time, so I want to make sure that Barbara has time to share hers. But some other areas are the peer reviews and exemplars. I will go into Ed Reports, find students who have earned fives, reach out to those students who have earned fives, ask them if I could use their fives as an instructional tool, and then I'll bring those into the classes for the next cycle submissions and share what the peer review, our peer review document is really specific. It will go through each of the rubric areas in this way. So students have to ask themselves, did the candidate demonstrate facilitation skills, yes or no? Provide evidence, and if not, what does that peer need to do to improve in that area? So this peer review is really specific to individual peer-on-peer support. The AI bot that I shared with you previously is the AI interaction. Again, supporting high context learners who may have some performance anxiety or may struggle with imposter syndrome or really need that mastery learning. Either way, these suggestions really help students be successful. And then, as I mentioned before, common errors and omissions documents, I included all of those there for you to review and to share out with your instructors as well.
Wow. Wow. So the I'm blown away by your bot, Cat. It's beautiful. I'm super excited about trying to break it now myself. So thank you for sharing that. So we wanted to end this session with an activity for you. And it goes back to data. So now we're hopping back to data. And I know like in a perfect world, we would have so much time that you'd have time to play with Cat's bot. And I wish we had that opportunity. But we thought we would just go back to the data piece for this last part. And so what we've done is we've created a worksheet for you. And from that worksheet, you can actually look at real data. And I'm gonna put that worksheet in the chat right now. Okay. I think most of you actually have access to the worksheet now. But what we did is basically I just took our 2025 data, like literally from Ed Reports. I then lined it up with, I disaggregated it as we talked about before. I disaggregated it in a variety of ways. I didn't share all of it with you. And what you can see also is it's completely anonymized. But one of the things that Kat and I have been talking a lot about is scores by instructor. In other words, which of our Cycle 2 instructors is doing really, really well? And whose students are scoring high on the Cal APA Cycle 2 and whose students aren't? Which instructors maybe should we offer some remediation to before we invite them back to teach that course again? Or which instructors should we ask to come back immediately? And so what we did is we came up with some questions. So I've presented the data to you. Anybody can go into this worksheet. And I just want to tell you a little bit about how the data is presented. I didn't just want to give you charts because I don't just give charts to our people. I think it's important for people to see how we get the data because I think it helps our faculty, our staff to understand the data better if you can actually see it. Now, someone can run to the charts and that's totally fine, but I like to be able to show the numbers so that people can see them. So if you're in this giant spreadsheet, the first thing you see, and you should see like so first of all, you see columns, lots of columns, and you also see lots of rows. But you'll see that the first way that I have the data disaggregated is by teacher, by the instructors who teach EDUA 562. There's Mr. Beagle, there's Ms. Labradoodle, there's Mr. Yorkie, and there's Ms. Poodle. And you can see them all right here. And then what you can see if you scroll to the right is you could see their average rubric scores. And you'll see that I just have them nicely color-coded and listed to the right. And then if you scroll even further right, you can see the average score, the average rubric score of the entire program, right? So this is actual data that obviously has been very anonymized, but what you can see is this 2025 average rubric scores for our students, cycle one, average score, I'm sorry, not cycle one, rubric one, average score 2.87, 2.79, and you can just see all the scores. Okay. Then if you scroll down, Kat, you're amazing at this. If you scroll, oopsie daisy, if you scroll down, you're going to see some more charts, right? So what you're going to see is cycle two by instructor, and you're going to see how Mr. Beagle stacks up against Ms. Labradoodle, how Mr. Yorkie stacks up against Mr. Poodle or Ms. Poodle, and you can see whose rubric scores, which teacher is doing the best job. And then if you scroll over, you can also see by instructor. So it's the same exact data presented in a different way. I think one of the important things that we always want to talk about is that data needs to be presented in multiple formats for people to understand. And then finally, if you scroll over even further, you're going to just see average rubric score. So what we want to do now is just give you a little opportunity to scroll through all this data, play with it a little bit, and then answer some questions for us. And we can do this as a group. But so if you look at our data, what do you see? Overall, which cycle two rubrics do our students struggle with? Can you see that in the data? And anybody can just participate here. You can just raise your hand. We just want to see how you work with data.
Well, I'll jump in for this first one just to get everybody feeling comfortable to start. Since the beginning, we've struggled for Cal IPA Cycle 2 with Rubric 4 and Rubric 6. And those are the two rubric areas that we struggle with the most. And that is pretty consistent with the state in terms of which rubric scores that tend to be lower. And we've noticed that we've put a lot of attention into the reflection component. So our reflection score actually has gone up, which we're excited about.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kat. So looking at the data, which instructor has the highest average total test score? Who's the instructor that's doing the best? So those are the rubrics.
You want the overall right here?
Yeah. Yeah, so who's doing really well?
Who am I going to keep on my staff? Who do I want to teach cycle one for the first cohort who's never taken a cycle one, taken a cycle test before? Who do I want to hire first?
Anybody can participate.
I'm not sure I can read it right, but is it is it the lime green?
Yes,
Yeah.
Mr. Yorkie.
Mr. York. My question, Catherine, is there, in terms of who the fieldwork supervisors are they, do you have information on on demographics? So is Mr. Yorkie a Latino male or?
Oh, that's such an interesting question.
So good. I love that you asked that. We do have that information, unfortunately, because we are always looking to bring in more instructors to our pool of adjuncts. And we do have a variety of ethnicities that our teachers represent. However, it's an area of growth for us. Yes, we do know the demographics of these instructors, and not one of them is Hispanic. Not one of them is in any other ethnicity other than white, which we know is our growth area. And
yeah, because exactly, if you're talking about role models and a sense of belonging, I would even take the yellow if that were if it was by demographics and that was a Latino male or Latina, I would take them and I wouldn't push them out. I would,
mentor them. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I so 100% agree with you. And I love that you brought that up, because that is a significant piece of information as we move forward and try to encourage our candidates that, yeah, we want you to have role models. We want people to look like you who are teaching our courses. But as I mentioned before, we are a Christian Lutheran university in Orange County, California, and the majority of our instructors are white. And that is something that we are working to change. And we have to actively and intentionally work to make that change, because it's not that we don't have highly qualified Hispanics who can teach. We know that we do. We need to find them, we need to hire them, and we need to train them.
And if so, there's a question in the chat that somebody asked: do you ever pair instructors up to co-teach?
Yes and no. If an instructor is, and this is something that I love these questions, they're so good, because these are questions I've asked, and we don't have the funding to have instructors go in and co-teach for a whole course. What we do, however, is we provide instructors who are wanting to learn, we put them as teaching assistants or additional instructors in the Canvas shell. So they have access to the course. They're able to access all the materials. They're able to see how assessors score, but we can't teach them to be an additional co-teacher. We do, however, provide them with hours for the hours they spend learning the content. So great question.
So I think one of the questions, though, and it goes all the way back to the plenary this morning, is that there can be a lot of data out there, right? Like, you can collect data in a lot of ways, but unless you're disaggregating and sorting the data, really that data doesn't help. And so one of the things that we're able to do, and that I appreciate about our directors, is that they want to see it, is that we are able to finely slice the data to give them exactly the answers to the questions they want. And so, yes, like the stuff I've presented and prepared here for you is just very, very high level. It's very simple data. It's nothing, not nearly as defined as we can get it. And a lot of people don't want that. But for those teachers, those directors in our program who want that, it's so much fun to share that. And that would be a whole new presentation. I think we can do a presentation just on CATS AI bot. I think we could do a presentation just on data and how you disaggregate and sort it. But yes, we can find out all that information. And then that does exactly answer your question. That's how we know who we need to hire, who we need to bring in, how we find teachers. Yes, exactly.
And what Noni said was so powerful, and I can't emphasize it enough. It's because we never would have known that our Hispanic males were the ones who are scoring the lowest on our CalIPA assessments. Because if we just looked at the data, it said, oh, our Hispanics, our Latina group, they're doing just fine. They're actually scoring better. But it took us breaking this down and slicing it and looking at it with intentionality to identify that our Hispanic males were the ones who were struggling the most, which we then shared out with our instructors. We then provided sense of belonging information into our coursework. We then provided mastery learning, which is where the AI bot came from. It all started with data, and using that data to make intentional changes within our courses is what we feel is transforming our program.
I love that, Kat. So we are at 11:21. Kat, what do you think? Should we maybe just put our reflection in and give people time now? Because we do end at 11:25. And we apologize. We could go on for hours on this stuff. I'm going to put this in now. You have access to go back and play with this data. And also, I'll just share right now, you are welcome to reach out to us. We would love to visit more with anybody who would like to visit with us. So I'm going to put that in the chat and give you an opportunity now to reflect and just kind of take a little time with all of the information that we presented.
Yeah, we just want to know, was there anything we shared with you that resonated, that you would like to maybe implement, that just got you thinking, wow, there is some things, even though our program is great, we have high scores, is there some way we can make adjustments to our program to meet the needs of all students? And that's what we'd like you just to think about. And we are by far not perfect. I'm still learning. I've dedicated the last couple of years to learn about culturally responsive teaching and learning. And I'm a beginner. I'm a baby in all of this. And I have to learn to recognize and to own what I know and what I don't know and to make improvements. So we really appreciate you all being here. Thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing you at the rest of this conference.
Yes, thank you so much, all of you, for coming. And I know lots of people have to hop out to get to their next session, so thank you all.